What is your personal encounter with the paranormal, ghosts, aliens, sleep paralysis, glitch in the matrix, etc.? I do not believe in ghosts or paranormal connections and poop. But this one really baffles me to this day. Happened a couple of years back and I still cannot forget it. Warning, story is kind of a downer. Also, sorry that it is long, but this is about as condensed as I could get it. Most of my friends have had trouble with substance abuse throughout their lives. Just the crowd I hung around with, I guess. Around the time of this story, one of my closest friends was clean off H for the longest they had ever been, a couple of months. But still fantastic progress for him and things were looking good. We were hanging out one day and he gave me some great news. Since middle school, he and his mom had been fighting for a medical malpractice lawsuit that happened to him when he was younger and they won. He got something like 10-15K out of the deal. So most of what we talked about that day was just how he was going to buy his mom something nice, and how he was going to use that money to finally go to college. I honestly had not seen him that happy in years and it was great. A day or two later I was sleeping like normal when all of a sudden I woke up at around 1:00 in the morning. I felt great. In fact, I felt absolutely euphoric. I felt like I was laying in the sun on the most beautiful summer's day in a puddle of 1,000 puppies. And that was just the first second. The next second was that multiply 1,000. And the next second that multiply 1,000 as well. Within moments, however, I went from this is pretty nice to oh poop, something is seriously wrong. Before blacking out, all of a sudden I was walking down the stairs to my friend's basement. It was absolutely destroyed with poop thrown everywhere, and empty bottles and syringes laying around. He was sitting there waiting for me on the couch with tears in his eyes. He just kept repeating that he was sorry and that he did not want to hurt anyone. He said the money did not last him long and he is back to being his broke-ass self. That he was sorry for bringing me there, and that he just needed to say goodbye to someone before finally saying goodbye to me, and everything fading out in another wave of euphoria. Me being logical to a fault and pretty straightforward, I woke up the next morning thinking, damn, what a weird dream. But not much else of it. Wrote it down in a dream journal I was doing at the time, and completely forgot about it. Ended up going to work and class like normal. Then a couple hours later my friend's mom called. She called me to break the news that my friend had passed away that night. Overdose. It was not until a couple of months later when another friend of mine, also ex-addict, was trying to console me by telling me how he went out with no pain, and how it was probably the best way to go when things started to get really weird. He started to explain to me what an overdose actually feels like, the overwhelming euphoria, and how it is impossible to explain to someone who has never experienced it before, i.e. me. It was then that what he was describing started to sound really familiar, and I went to my phone, opened my dream journal and started reading the entry from a couple months back to him out loud. He pretty much said, yeah, exactly that. Where had you get that story? And told him the whole thing. Both of us were at a loss for words. And I still am. As I said, I do not believe in this stuff, and if someone told me this story I would say they were high as fuck. But it is a memory that I will never forget. My mum's experience with what she thinks was a ghost. She went outside around 10 p.m. for a cigarette years ago and saw a very elderly woman walking up our neighbor's back stairs to their veranda. Mum said she wanted to ask if she was alright. It was very rare for our neighbors to have visitors that late, they were also elderly. But Mum said she completely lost her voice and felt stunned. Though she could not look away, she ended up getting out a hello and the woman just disappeared. The next morning Mum made the joke to our neighbors asking why she was not invited over for their nightcap with their visitor, and they very casually replied, oh, so you have now seen our ghost too. They were excited over it and not at all scared. Barry. Neighbor says an elderly lady follows Elwin, his wife, everywhere and they feel pure comfort around her. But their own children and grandchildren are frightened by the lady on the stairs when they stay. We joke about the girl who lives in our house. My wife insists that she was a victim of a fire in the schoolhouse in the 1870s that was on our property before the house was built. We've never seen her, but there is the occasional door locked or unlocked, or the errant attic light on, and so forth. Not a presence that is very strong or overbearing. There was one time though, when my wife was in the kitchen, and I was coming down the stairs, and we both heard Yuri, a good girl, Dottie, coming from the living room. Dottie is our dog. trouble but a good girl to be sure. Apparently there is one more person besides my wife and I in the house who agrees. My sister had a dream that she was kidnapped and being used as a sex slave in a random basement in an unknown location. Obviously it freaked her out, but that is not the crazy part. The next day her ex-boyfriend called her to ask if she was okay because he had a dream that she got abducted and nobody knew where she was. Parallel universe leakage. Before my grandpa passed away, he had always been telling us how after he had died, he would appear to us in his white clothes and watch over us. He passed away from cancer when I was 8. The years passed and I was a very unhappy kid. Undiagnosed autism. Sexual assault victim. So at age 14 I tried to hang myself. It failed, thank God. As I was drifting away, my grandpa's image appeared to me and told me this was not my time to go yet and begged me to wake up. I did wake. Lying on my bedroom floor, and I ran downstairs to my mum, crying, telling her what I had done. She went upstairs shortly after to clean up the ropes and told me much later that it looked as if they had been cut clean with a knife. After the traumatic event, I began seeing things. Puffs of mist outside in front of my bedroom window. When I was 16 was the first time I actually did see that it was my grandpa, just floating in front of my window. Capital I. Tried to talk to him a few times. I asked him why he could not come inside. He responded that he could not, because my mum had asked him not to. We spoke about a few things on occasion. When he mentioned the day where I tried to take my own life, he told me he tried to save me by cutting the rope and then went to check on me a few times. One time, my younger brother apparently saw him slip into my bedroom and got scared. After which my mother apparently went upstairs, asked my grandpa that if he was there to please not come in anymore as he was scaring her son. I decided to tell my mum about all this and took her out for dinner. Told her everything. She was shocked and amazed and confirmed that she did tell her father to not come inside and that was why he stayed outside. I am just glad she believed me. I have since had more traumatic experiences with the paranormal and have shut myself off to their influences. But I still remember the events with my grandpa vividly. Mine is not scary in the slightest, but I like to think of it as a weird glitch in the Matrix. One summer afternoon when I was younger, my family heard the music of an ice cream truck coming down our road. Ice cream trucks never come down our road. We ran outside and placed our orders, and expressed our astonishment to the woman inside. "Really?" she said. "I come down this road every week." "Sure you do," we all responded. She drove off, and we never saw her again. I am sure it was just a mistake on her part. But I like to think there is an alternate reality where we get ice cream trucks down our street every week. Not me, but my dad. He grew up in a small village in Greece. One day on his walk home it was storming quite heavily. He was standing under a tree in an attempt to wait it out. As he is waiting, he is approached by a slow old woman who he had never seen before. She had an umbrella in one hand and a walking stick in the other. She asks him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I am waiting out the storm so I can go home. I do not want to catch a cold." She tells him, "You have a long life ahead of you. I would risk catching a cold if I were you." And with that, she starts to slowly walk down the street and out of sight. My dad waits for a few more minutes and takes her advice. He starts walking home. A few more minutes pass and he hears an explosion. He turns around and sees the tree he was waiting under was hit by lightning and blew up. Frightened, he runs to his home, hoping to bump into the old woman to thank her, but he never saw her again after that encounter. He is convinced she was a paranormal being since he never caught up to her that night even though she was so slow. He had never seen her in the village before or after that moment, and no one knew who he was referring to when asking around for her. My grandpa had a similar experience. He enlisted in World War II at the very end of the war when he was 17, and during his training he was at a firing range. He was standing off to the side waiting for his turn, or maybe he was finishing up. Not important. A lieutenant he never saw before came up to him and told him very sternly, "You are not supposed to stand there. Move." A little flummoxed, he moved to a different area, and just a minute or two after he did, a bullet ricocheted right where he would have been standing. He never saw that lieutenant again. He figured he may have been saved by a legitimate guardian angel. Just recently, About 2 weeks ago, I was on my way to Home Depot when I arrived at this stoplight. After sitting there about 15 or so seconds, the light turns green. As soon as it did, I felt like I couldn't move at all. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like if something was telling me to not go just yet. After about a second or two, this red Ford Explorer barrels through the intersection, running the red at what must have been about 50 miles per hour. I don't know how much exactly, but it went ridiculously fast. After the car sped through the intersection, I could move again. I don't know what that something was, but had it not been for that, I would have probably not been able to tell you all this little story. In my hometown in northern FL, we would sometimes get a thick fog that was terrible to navigate. I was always told by my grandparents that if I ever saw Confederate soldiers walking in that fog, keep my head down and move along even if they talked to me. Rare advice for the South. As for Yankee soldiers, I was to nod and point them in a direction if they said they were lost. And if I ever ran into a woman in a white dress named Caroline, do not tell her your name and excuse yourself before she touches you. Wow, that's creepy. Any more details? Like what will happen if she touches you or you tell her your name? I do not remember all the details, but I was told that I would not be able to find my way home if I talked to her. She was the ghost of a Confederate soldier's adult daughter, and one of the neighborhood kids disappeared for a couple days after she said she spoke to her. I do not remember exactly why she took the children though, but several kids did go missing during the fogs. I do not know if this was some weird coincidence, but when I was 14 I was staying the night at my friend's house and we decided to sleep in the guest room instead of her own bedroom. She kept telling me she thought the room was haunted and I thought she was just trying to wind me up, but just before she went to sleep she mentioned it again. At that moment, everything suddenly went really cold and the radio randomly switched on and started making weird static noises even though nothing touched it. My friend refused to sleep in there ever again. I did be so dead. I wonder if something happened in the room from prior owners of the house. 1 week after my great-nan passed away, I, 3 at the time, told my mum that I had seen her in my bed and she had told me to tell my nan, her daughter, that she was okay now. I do not think I could even comprehend death. So spooky stuff. What was the response after you told your nan? I am unsure, but there had to have been some relief alongside crippling fear. Laughing. It is not something you expect a young child to come out with. I grew up with a strange mom. We do not really talk anymore. She was a paranormal investigator when I was growing up. There are loads of stories there. When I was about 3, there is video footage of me coming downstairs as angry as could be. Not temper tantrum angry. Pissed. In the video I keep yelling at my mom that they would not let me play with my toys. She tried to ask me who. I just kept angrily telling her that they would not let me play with my toys. We did not get a cat until I was 4, but before that, there was some kind of cat creature in the house. I had seen it in my mother's closet once. Another time I remember being woken in the middle of the night but the cat yowling in my playroom. The next room over I could see a shadow under the door before I opened it and heard a hiss. Upon opening the door there was nothing there. As I got older things got stranger. After my mother got back from the catfish plantation, strange things started happening. We could hear someone running up and down the stairs at night. Shoes would be thrown down the stairs. My most vivid memory of this time was me sitting on my mom's bed. We had no pets at the time and it was just me and her. Her bathroom was attached to their bedroom. She was the kind of woman that had 20 almost empty bottles on the side of the tub. While watching Barney one day, it sounded as if someone had stuck their arm out and just swiped all the bottles into the tub at once. My mother came around the corner yelling, "Jeremy." Turned out Jeremy was the name of a young man who was a slave at the plantation she had visited. He had fallen off the back of a hay wagon and died. After that day she got back in her car and drove back to the plantation and all of the strange happenings stopped. Also now she believes she is an alien. So, that is a whole other story. LOL. That seems like the worst kind of bringing work home with you.